Beyond Typicals offers a lot of customization for surface textures within the software. You can choose from a list of more than 40 different surface textures and apply those to either the surface of a section as well as the subsurface layers below that top surface. I've heard a lot of folks ask about the ability to customize this even further, potentially even bring in their own images and apply them as surface textures. So there is a workaround that I wanted to detail in this video that gives you a little bit more advanced customization beyond choosing from our textures and being able to add hue to those things like we have for this concrete paver section. So how you would do that is by importing an asset, because imported assets allow you to also import in image files and apply them as surface textures. So let's say for this paving area here, I wanted my own image as the surface texture. I'm not going to be able to change the surface texture of this section, but what I can do is put in a 3D shape that basically sits over the top of it and covers that up. So what I'm first going to do is head to SketchUp and build a section or build a block that basically sits over the top of that section. So I'm going to make it 6 feet wide and make it 100 feet long just to match that section in Beyond Typicals. And then I can give it some depth to make it a 3D object. And let's just pull that up for 6-inch height. We want to be approximate here because if we do apply an image to the surface, we don't want to stretch anything out of place. So I get a size that's close to what it would look like once it's placed in Beyond Typicals. Next thing I'm going to do is export this plain white object as an OBJ file. And I've already got one here as a 6-foot wide slab, but I'm going to go ahead and do slab here in this. And it's going to come out as an OBJ. And I want to make sure that I export with the units of centimeters from SketchUp because that's what comes into the correct scale in Beyond Typicals. So we'll hit OK and export that slab OBJ. Then head to Beyond Typicals and import that 3D object first. So we will go to our 3D assets, our building blocks, sort by OBJ. And if you need an object file similar to this, just reach out, Brian at beyondcad.com. I'd be happy to prepare kind of the starting point for you and be able to get you that asset. So we will finish the import and now drag that 3D object into the model. And what I'm going to do here is just place it off to the side. And let's move it up into the air so we can see it a little bit better. But that is basically the shape that we created in SketchUp, exported to an OBJ, and now imported into this project file. There's a little pencil icon for this asset under the Imported tab, now that it's in here, where I can adjust some of the properties of this. And included in the properties is texture customization. So I can actually change the color of the surface of that object, or even choose from some of those preset textures that come with Beyond Typicals that are also there in the section texturing menu. If I do want my own image, I can press this plus icon and you'll see it reverts back to the plain white object, and there's a button for Import New. And that's where we can go choose a JPEG or a PNG image of a surface texture and apply it to the surface. So the next thing I'm going to do is go get a new surface texture from Polyhaven. This is a great place to find free surface textures. So I'm going to head to the Assets, Textures drop down here. And let's go find a unique surface texture that we can apply to that box. And I know we don't have any sort of concrete pavers that look like this in Beyond Typicals. So let's go ahead and choose that option. And we will choose for a 1K download and also get the diffuse PNG. There we go. So that pops up in our web browser and we can save that as an image on our computer. So I'm going to save this to my materials subfolder so I can come back here and grab stuff like this in the future. But we've got a concrete pavers PNG that I've now saved to my computer. And now back in Beyond Typicals, we can click Import New, go find that image file that we saved, which is concrete pavers. And now that image has been applied as a surface texture to this object. And you'll see that by default, that texture scale is showing up really small. The way to make that adjustment is this texture scale bar. And for the ability to make that look bigger, we're actually going to adjust that texture scale downward. So as I pull this number smaller, we'll start to see those bricks get bigger. That 0.01 is probably a little bit too big, so let's knock that down to 0.02, maybe 0.03. And now this becomes a 3D object that I can just move into place so that it just barely sits over the top of that other paver top for this section. So let's move that down. We can adjust the Z coordinate over here on the left, adjust the Y coordinate. Actually, a 0 is going to put it right in the middle of the section that it's on, and a 0 in the X direction is actually going to move it to the midpoint along the section. So let's do that. So it looks like this is exactly the same size, and that's why we're getting that Z fighting in the front, where you can kind of see flashing between both of those surface textures. A couple ways to fix that: maybe just move that a little bit forward, or I could adjust the scale of it too in the X direction to make it a little bit larger. Let's move that forward, and now we've basically replaced the surface texture in Beyond Typicals with this 3D object that has its own custom texture on top. From there, you can still adjust the texture scale if you want to increase or decrease the size of that surface texture. Plus, you can add some color to it. So there's still the ability to pull out this color wheel and change the hue of that surface texture if that's desired. So with this custom workflow of importing your own 3D objects and then also importing your own surface texture onto those, you can even push Beyond Typical surface texturing beyond what we give you in the software. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. You can always reach me at brian@beyondcad.com.